the Ringer NFL show. Sheil Kapadia here with Steven Ruiz and Diante Lee. We have some heavyweight matchups in Week 15. It is a good slate, especially for this late in the season. Playoff implications, maybe a Super Bowl preview, all that good stuff. We're going to talk about those games. But first, gentlemen, the biggest story in sports this week. Bill Belichick will not be coaching an NFL team, we think, in 2025. He is going the college route. He is going to become, or has become, the head coach at North Carolina. I feel like I was thinking about this earlier today, and I'm like, I'm stunned by this. Like, if you would have told me at the end of the last season when he gets fired, or whatever they called it, with the New England Patriots, that he would be off for a year and then he would return as North Carolina's head coach, I would have been like, give me a break. That's not happening. It sounds good for content, but that's not the way this thing is going to go. But here we are. Ruiz, let's start with you because you wrote a column on this on theringer.com. What is your reaction? Like, any way you want to take it, whether are you stunned? How do you think this is going to go? What does it tell us? What was your kind of big take when you heard this news?
I mean, I was shocked that it was UNC, but I'm intrigued. I want to see Belichick back on the sidelines. I've always been like a fan of him, just observing his team, watching his team's game plans and all that. And we missed it this year. We don't have it this year. And I don't know how much of that stuff is going to matter. Like the stuff that made him such a great NFL coach, the game planning, the details that he was able to relay to his players, evolving the scheme on both sides of the ball constantly. I don't know how much that's going to matter at that level. I think a lot of it's going to be about roster building, and that's what he seems to be pitching, that he is this guy that can build a championship level roster. I don't know. Like, I really don't have a take on how this is going to go, but I think it's fun. I don't see I don't have any problems with him going back to school, even if he uses this as a way to get his son a job down the line. His son Steve, who coordinated the Washington defense last year, and they did pretty good this year. I was looking up the stats the other day. They were 37th in EPA per play allowed on defense, so not a bad job by Steve Belichick. So if he does end up being a nepo baby and getting that job down the line, then so be it. It's worth it watching Bill Belichick go up against these guys, these college coaches, like Bill Belichick versus Dabo Swinney. Sign me up.
Well, I don't say so be it to the nepo baby thing, Diante. I mean, give me a break. Like, if he's a good enough coach that someone else hire him, it doesn't need to be that, to get your dad, you get the job
all nepo
at North
babies.
Carolina.
Every coaching staff is full of nepo babies.
I understand, but that doesn't mean I have to like it or accept it. Diante, you work closely with kids who are a little bit younger than the guys that Bill Belichick is going to work with. This is a 72-year-old head coach who I don't know what he's going to do with recruiting, or is it going to be heavy on the transfer portal, or how he's going to build this team. How do you think this is going to go, Bill Belichick, college coach?
I mean, there's just so many ways in which this fascinates me. I will say, from the high school sports perspective, the thing that's going to be fascinating with me and him trying to connect with kids of this era is, if you graduate from high school right now, if you're the 17 to 19-year-old range right now, you missed the first iteration of the Pats dynasty.
Wow.
Totally.
That's depressing.
You have no lived experience of what it was like in the early 2000s of watching that team build itself up to be a Super Bowl contender. And what you know of Brady by the time you're probably in your formative years is him on the back end, right? That Patriots era was basically coming towards its close as you were entering high school, more likely than not. So I just don't know how much it's going to resonate with kids. I think that it's always going to be powerful for you to roll out the amount of Super Bowl rings that he has, right? And, to invite players that are already on the roster to his home and show all the Lombardi replicas that are probably hanging around his estate and what have you. I just don't know if the recruiting thing is going to work as quickly as people might want to believe it can, if you're on the more optimistic side. But I'm with Steven in the sense of being interested to just see a coach that we know has been great for this long have to apply a skill set in a context that's totally different than what we're used to. The college game is much more volatile in terms of roster building. We don't know Bill Belichick to work effectively in volatile environments, right? Yeah. The NIL landscape will be changing on a year-to-year basis as he's walking in. There's there could be federal legislation by the time he gets to year 2, year 3 of his contract that totally changes the landscape from underneath his feet as is. And we're talking about an older guy. I think maybe I think that maybe in the best case scenario, he's able to get hot in the transfer portal. I've seen a lot of reporting, right, about UNC really trying to build out a legitimate football infrastructure, bringing in more staff, trying to raise more funds to be able to, kind of support the kind of football apparatus you need to be able to compete at a high level, at a national championship level. And I think that if they're able to strike hot with the initial hiring cycle, there's an opportunity for them to at least be interesting. I just think that when I look at the contract, though, I saw some language that the buyout drops from $10 million to $1 million next June. And to me, that sounds like a guy that is kind of recognizing that, hey, I really want to coach, but it's entirely possible that we could walk in the door and this is a total disaster and we all need to go our separate ways. Or maybe the NFL opens back up and he gets to take another shot at the Sheil wins record. So this can just go in a bunch of different ways, but I'm just fascinated to see a guy in this position who we know is so close, if not already, the greatest coach and certainly close to being the winningest coach in NFL history, try to make this happen in a way that we've never seen from him before.
What would be your bar for success for this? Like, he's not going to win a national championship. I'm going to go out on a limb and say he's not going to win a national championship.
Oh, there's no chance of winning a national championship.
I feel like that's even unrealistic. That's an unrealistic expectation to have. It's not even something he's been promising. He's just like, we're going to turn this into an NFL pipeline. And he didn't really mention the wins. He's like, oh yeah, I mean, I guess if the wins are also there, that's a perk. But if they win, they get to an ACC title game, that's a win for me.
Title. Yeah.
I'm putting that on his resume. That I'm using that in arguments for him. I have been a defender of Belichick, especially against the Brady stans who think that Brady would have been the same guy without the greatest coach of all time. But I am excited to see how this works and how it applies at the college level, because his thing was getting these details and preparing his players for these games. I just don't know how realistic that is with 18 and 19-year-olds and how much that information is going to be useful. Diante probably has a better idea. He's coaching players that are getting recruited. So it just seems like college football is more about we build an identity and we get really good players and then we just do that every week. It's not so much like a game plan week to week type of thing.
Yeah, to me, that what you said in terms of making an ACC championship appearance in the first 2 years, that would obviously be on-field success. I think that narrative-wise for Bill, what would be powerful is you go find a quarterback in the transfer portal and you make that guy look draftable.
Arch
right?
Manning.
That to me, I think would be the more interesting thing. I would say past Arch Manning, I think Quinn Ewers is considering going into the transfer portal. Let's say you go grab a Quinn Ewers and you make Quinn Ewers look like a viable professional quarterback, which he didn't look like when he was healthy this year. That to me, I think would be great for him narrative wise, is to say I can step down to this level and I can instantly get better results from, players who have already been at this level that were not playing as well once they got to me and my staff. So I think that would help him out a bunch too.
Yeah, I have a lot of questions about how this is going to go and how long he's going to be there. I mean, I even have the question, 6 weeks from now, if Shad Khan calls him up and says, we had a plan A and B and those fell through, just asking, do you want to revisit this? It doesn't have to be the Jaguars, but it could be someone else. I mean, I just have so much trouble buying any narrative that this is what he wanted to do, that this there's some romantic aspect to him going back and coaching college. And I know, I saw the David Halberstam thing and everything. I just believe in my heart, if you ask me, that he wanted to coach in the NFL again this year, that he probably can't believe that no one's going to give him a job to coach in the NFL. And the big reason why is because for whatever he says about, I don't need control or that kind of thing, and I'll work with, I don't think anyone believes it. I don't think any
if that
NFL
were true,
owner
he'd be in the NFL.
Yeah. So I don't think anyone believes that.
In the league.
I think that was the case last offseason as well. And so it is going to be interesting. I'm with you. I'm going to be watching North Carolina's first game on that first Saturday or whenever they play next year. And I want to see how this goes. But, he had his last 4-year stretch. He still has his defensive fastball. Everything else to me is a question mark. I mean, I don't think he's learned anything about, hey, maybe don't surround yourself by the exact same people, the exact same yes men. Maybe try to go out and find some talent, people who think differently than you. When we see what this staff looks like, I think it's going to look like what we think it's going to look like. And in terms of putting together a roster, that's fascinating in today's college football landscape. He put together arguably the worst roster in the NFL in the post-Brady era there. So now, what is his strategy going to be? How does that work? 72 years old. Is he going to be the easiest guy to work with? So This is interesting. It is a story that shocked me. I don't know how it's going to go, but I do agree with you guys that it's definitely going to make North Carolina relevant, obviously, and give us all a reason to watch their games next year. So Bill Belichick. I'm going to believe he's I need to see like Saturday in the fall, by the way, before I'm just like 100% or until all the NFL head coaching openings get filled before I'm 100% sure that this is actually happening.
I like that Sheil is betting on another treadmill epiphany for Bill Belichick, you know.
I want to see that first game. They play TCU. Guess who else played TCU in the first game? Deion Sanders. So there's the bar. Sanders. If you can't beat Deion, then I got low hopes for your future.
Oh, I forgot. We already know the schedule. There you go. Deion Sanders. All right. Bill Belichick at Chapel Hill. Let's get to the games here. We have a monster one, possibly a Super Bowl preview. I was thinking earlier today, if I just had to pick a Super Bowl matchup, would this be it? I think the answer is yes. Buffalo Bills at Detroit Lions. Lions are 2.5-point favorites here. They're still trying to hold on to that one seed, and I guess trying to hold on to that first place in the NFC North too, with the way the Vikings aren't losing any football games. Bills lost ground in the race for the one seed in the AFC last week, but they're still chasing that Chiefs team who knows how that last month is going to go for Kansas City. You guys are writing a piece for The Ringer that probably will be up, I would think, when by the time people listen to this at some point Friday, kind of a chalkboard, X's and O's. Let's get into this matchup. Bills offense versus Lions defense, Lions offense versus Bills defense. So we want to get into it here on this show, give a little preview of what you're going to find in that article. Ruiz, let's start with you. You had the Bills in this. Let's start when the Bills have the football, Josh Allen and company going up against this Detroit Lions defense. What are you looking at?
In the article, I start with the early down offense for Buffalo because that's where we've seen the most change in 2024 compared to last year when Ken Dorsey was running the offense. Obviously, Joe Brady took over later in the year, but the offense mostly stayed the same last year. But this year, they're getting under center more. They're putting more tight ends on the field, and they're running the ball more. They become a run-first team on first down. And the funny thing is we've like celebrated Brady and these changes and how it's helped Josh Allen become this more, I would say, more mature version of himself compared to last year, at least with the turnovers. But the first down offense actually isn't that good. It's like below league average or around league average in EPA. It's below league average in success rate. But the utility that first down offense serves is that it's getting Buffalo into a lot of second and medium and second and short situations. And that's where Josh Allen has just been an insane player. He's averaging over a point, over 1.0 EPA per dropback in second and medium. That clears the NFL by about 0.3 EPA per dropback. Lamar Jackson is the only one close. So what they're doing is they're putting these tight ends on the field. They're getting these wide offensive lines. They're putting 3 tight ends, maybe an extra lineman on there. And they're running these just straight ahead, zone, weak side zone plays, trying to get the defense to kind of overload to one side and then kind of flow to the ball after the snap. And they're using that to set up these deep shots off play action. And they don't run them very often, but when they run them, they tend to work. And especially on second down, they really work. So I think that's the thing that Detroit is going to have to figure out. It's not only winning those first down battles when they're on defense, but also reckoning with this offense and this unstoppable force when they do get into second and medium and second and short, because it is going to happen. And I do think that's where the game is going to be won, at least for Detroit from the defensive perspective.
What do you think, Diante? What is the defensive game plan for this version of the Bills offense and Josh Allen?
It's funny. I think in the first matchup between Green Bay and Detroit, I think I had a remark that was a first and second down football game. And I think that you could say the same about this matchup as well. I think a lot of this is really a first down football game. I think a lot of this game is going to be decided by whether or not Detroit can load up the line of scrimmage and stop the run. I do think that there's a little bit of an element of kind of giving the mouse a cheese, right? Because you don't want to allow Buffalo to just be able to pound away with those 12, 13 personnel looks or 12 plus the 6 offensive lineman looks and getting a 2nd and 5, getting a 2nd and 4. So they are going to have to play with bigger bodies up front. And I think that, and this is something that we'll get to obviously when the piece goes live, but this will probably be the first time that we see all the losses that Detroit has suffered up front and the influence that it's had on this defense. They like to match body for body. So if you go heavy, they go heavy. The issue is that they've lost 6, 7 guys to the IR in their front 7. So now you don't have as many options. And that means more of using Brian Branch near the line of scrimmage. And to me, the thing that Buffalo does really well with their heavy personnel and their run game on early downs is that that's exactly what they're hunting for. They want to get that indicator that safety's got to come down into the box to fit the run aggressively. And then that's when you get Dalton Kincaid on the over routes. That's when you get Khalil Shakir on the over routes. That's where they get to set up those deep play action shots, those bootlegs, where now you have the threat of Josh Allen's legs just as much as being able to rip a ball up the sideline to move the chains. So to me, that's where a lot of this game is going to go, at least in terms of Buffalo's offense versus Detroit's defense.
And like Buffalo's play action passing game, there are a lot of like basic concepts. They run a lot of those like bootlegs where you have like the 3 levels. You have the guy going deep, you have the crosser, and then you have the guy in the flat. But they also have like some designs off of that like no other team in the NFL can run. Like for instance, they'll do like a 3-level route like I just described, but like there's a sail route instead of the crossing route. It's like all the 3 receivers to the same side. Usually like it's number 2 or number 3 receiver, like the inside guys that are running that route, because you need more space for that outbreaking route for your quarterback to make the throw. They'll have number 1 run that outbreaker. And Josh Allen has the arm to fit that in. And like the receiver's breaking and he only has like 10 yards to the line of scrimmage and the ball's there before the receiver gets to the line of scrimmage with plenty of time to get his feet down. You can't run that with any old quarterback. You can't run that with Jared Goff. And Jared Goff is a talented thrower when everything's right around him. And that also applies to like how deep the routes are. Like you can run a deeper route than you're used to. And that kind of makes it harder for a defense to defend those concepts that are very common around the league. But those little nuances do change things. But like Detroit's going to play man coverage, so that's less of a concern. It usually affects his zone coverage more often. But it is something to note. And I think like those big play action pass plays, the Bills are going to have to hit on like 2 or 3 of those to keep up with this Lions offense.
How else did you break it down? So those were the early downs. Are you doing like 3rd down or red zone, or what's the other thing that has your attention?
The other situation is 3rd down. And that's where like the Bills, I was going to say that's where fake Sean McDermott, that's where we have to win this game. You know,
we should have made you shave your head or something. Yeah. For this, like really get into it, you know?
Yeah. It's, I think it's just like, you know, Josh Allen put on the cape and lead us to victory. It might have to be, because I think the matchup on the other side of the ball is bad for Buffalo. It's very bad for Buffalo. I don't know how they're going to stop this run game. They've been one of the worst run teams against like the specific looks the Lions major in, like under center, tight ends on the field. We're just going to run it down your throat. The Bills aren't good at that. And it's almost by design. Like they play nickel personnel against like everything. You put tight ends out there, they're going to play nickel. You put a fullback out there, they're going to play nickel. And they're going to ask their defensive backs to tackle. And against this offensive line, like that works against most offenses, because most offenses are going to spread their run. And they're running modern offenses where Detroit is kind of, you know, going against the grain a little bit. And they have the offensive line that just makes that more reliable than any other team. Like one of the reasons why we kind of poo-poo the run game, or we're like, oh, the run game doesn't matter, is because it's not efficient. Like most running plays aren't efficient. But with Detroit, those plays are efficient. And that's why they're able to run it at any point. Like it's 3rd and 5, they can run it, and they're probably going to pick it up. So that's a big concern for me. I think Detroit's going to live in like 3rd and short, or 2nd and medium. And it's a hard offense to defend when that's the case.
To me, I think that when you talk about like roster builds and just defensive philosophy, I think that Ben Johnson, and more importantly, the way that Detroit has approached this retool, rebuild, however you want to phrase it, this offense was built to take advantage of this specific kind of defense that's always going to be in 4 down, that always wants to play in nickel, that loves to keep 2 deep safeties. And I think if you just go back to last Sunday and watch what the Rams were able to do to take advantage on the ground when they had, you know, those open B gaps, by getting into duo, by getting into condensed sets and being able to run zone and their different gap schemes as well. That puts a lot of stress on Teron Johnson, on Taylor Rapp, who I think is dealing with an injury, on DeMar Hamlin. And we've talked a lot about, you know, those guys having discipline issues, having tackling issues, the spacing of the defense kind of falling apart when they're asked to be both run fitters and have to show up in zone coverage. And I do think that if you're Detroit, this is a great game for Jahmyr Gibbs to go and pop a couple of explosive runs and really force you now to have to drop DeMar Hamlin or Taylor Rapp into the box to try to load it up. And to me, the moment that you do that, that's where a guy like Jameson Williams becomes a game breaker. He was a big focus for me when I was watching tape, because that's the guy I think that kind of opens up everything else within Detroit's offense. When he has that threat of catching the ball on a dig, on an over route, and turn up the field and go get 10, 15, 20 yards after the catch, that is the one factor that Buffalo's defense has struggled against all season long. Baltimore was able to get whatever they wanted in the intermediate and downfield areas of the field. The few times they did pass when they played earlier this year, because they struggled with that. CJ Stroud, for all his struggles this season, they were able to kind of pick upon them both on the sideline and in the seams because those safeties struggle at times. And it obviously showed up last week against Matthew Stafford attacking outside the numbers. There are so many ways that I think Buffalo has to be aware of where their weaknesses are, that this might just turn into they're always playing too deep, or they're always playing single high, and Detroit is basically just putting the ball where the safeties aren't. It could just come down to that. And if that's the case, I just don't know how the Bills get the necessary stops to win this football game unless their defensive line plays out of their minds. And I just don't know if that's what they'll be equipped to do against this type of rushing attack and offensive line.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the injuries there. Rasul Douglas, Taylor Rapp, Damar Hamlin, all on the injury report on Thursday as we record this. So those are three members of the secondary, and now you're gearing up for one of the best offenses in the NFL. And the point about the pass rush is a good one, because it feels like whenever you face a good offense, it's like, well, if you can just, get home with 4, but that Lions offensive line is just so good. And I don't know that the Bills, their pass rush, I would say, has not been as good recently as it was early in the season, where it's hard for me to imagine a scenario where they're consistently winning up front there against that Lions offensive line.
Yeah, Rousseau has been held without I think he was held without a pressure last week and his pressure rate has been down over the last month. So that's a big concern. But as I write in the piece, I think it's not about scheme, especially for Buffalo's defense. I think it's about their players making big plays, their best players making big plays. Like, the scheme is I think McDermott and Babbage are going to come up with a scheme, a good structure to do their best to limit explosive plays. But someone's got to make a play or two. You gotta make a play on first down. Like, Teron Johnson needs a tackle for loss on third down. Get him in 2nd and 12. Make Jared Goff play in 2nd and long. Like, I have a table in the article that compares Jared Goff on second and long compared to 2nd and short. Totally different player. Like, his stats almost flip completely. He goes from 0.2 EPA per dropback to -2 EPA per dropback. He hasn't been sacked on 2nd and short all season long. He hasn't thrown an interception on 2nd and short all season long. 2nd and long, he gets sacked 10% of the time. He's thrown plenty of interceptions on 2nd and long. So that's how you have to do it. I don't think they're going to win the battle on first down or win the war on first down. But if they win a couple battles, I think they can win the war on 2nd down. And that's where they have to win this game.
Yeah, if both offenses are moving the ball, I wonder, the Lions I know are willing to lean into variance and just be aggressive, and our pass rush isn't getting there. We're blitzing. That's in Aaron Glenn's DNA anyway, and I think he's done that more as they've lost guys. So it's like you're playing to, hey, we might give up explosives, but let's create those 2 turnovers, or like Ruiz was saying, those 2 negative plays that allow us to get a stop. I wonder if the Bills will be willing to do that, if that's going to be in McDermott's DNA, or if this could be a game where just they're giving up long drive after long drive and they're not doing anything about it. Last thing I wanted to get to here on my end is I was looking at Josh Allen's overall numbers, and because I was trying to figure out how different is this version of Josh Allen than previous versions of Josh Allen. And is it actually different at all? No. And Ruiz is shaking his head no.
Turning the ball over this year.
Yeah, but that's all it is. And is it just the turnover variance is in his favor? I mean, if you look at the numbers right now, their passing game, he's 14th in dropback success rate, but 3rd in EPA per pass play. So they are hitting explosives at a top 6 or 7 rate in the NFL. And meanwhile, he's got just 7 turnovers through 14 weeks. The previous 4 seasons of his career, he had at least 14 turnovers at this point in the season every single year. And so you say, all right, well, is he taking care of the football better? He's 17th in turnover-worthy play percentage, which I think is fine for a player like Josh Allen. That's not going to kill you. But at the same time, that would suggest, and I haven't watched every turnover-worthy play, but that would suggest that just some of the variance is going his favor. So it's just so funny, the narratives. Is Joe Brady going to get a head coaching job because Josh Allen had a season where he didn't get hit by the turnover variance? Is Josh Allen going to win an MVP this year because he had a season where he got a little luckier with turnover? So it's just so funny how the narratives are built on stuff that's so random. That's only a difference of 7 plays, right? He has 7 turnovers this year. Most other years, he had 14 or 15. So 7 or 8 plays is going to shape so many of the things we say about the Bills. When in my opinion, like, you could pretty much throw any offensive coordinator in the NFL there. With Josh Allen, the product is going to be pretty good. So that was just one thing I wanted to bring up.
Yeah, that's a point I kind of try to hint at in the piece, is that like the scheme isn't that like fascinating.
Right.
It really isn't. It's the players and specifically it's Josh Allen, but I do think he has more help now. And me and Diante were talking about this during the week. I do think that Brady has done a good job of deploying those talented players, like the receiving core. Right. I think the way that they use Khalil Shakir, especially on early downs, where he's mostly like the check down option, like in the flat. And like he has that punt return skill set, so he could turn those into great play. I think he's like top 10, top 5 in expected yards after catch or over expectation, according to Next Gen Stats. And then Amari Cooper, like his role on third down. I think this is a big Amari Cooper down on third down, Amari Cooper game on third down. They like to play a lot of 3-by-1 formations. Like they do that more than anybody in the NFL, according to the numbers. They'll put Amari Cooper. Sometimes they'll put Keon Coleman. I know he's been out. So I'll be interested to see if he does play this week, like how they use that ISO spot. But with Amari Cooper out there, if you play one-on-one and you play man coverage, which we know Detroit's going to do, Josh Allen's going to throw it deep. He's going to give him a chance to win. And the way he's throwing that vertical deep shot, especially outside the numbers of late, where he just pinning it on his receivers. Like they don't even have to get open. It's on their back shoulder and it just sticks to them like Velcro. He's going to make a lot of big plays. So I am interested to see if Detroit kind of switches up their MO too, especially on defense.
Yeah, it's the same thing against man coverage. 15th in success rate, but 3rd in EPA per pass play. So to your point, he is making you pay with those explosives if that's how you want to choose to play, even if it's not down to down, positive play after positive play. So should be a fun one. Special teams. I got to be the special teams guy. You know, Lions have our first in special teams in the entire NFL DVOA.
And the Titans.
What's that? Yeah,
the Titans.
That definitely helps for sure. But they'll throw a fake punt in there every now and then as well. And the Bills obviously have had more issues. So in a close game, always something to keep in mind. I like the Lions in this game. I don't know, Ruiz, which way are you leaning?
I took the Bills, but no, I could see the Lions just totally demolishing them, especially if like Josh Allen has an off game. But I think it's going to be a high scoring game. I think it's going to be similar to that Rams Bills game we saw, and I'm going to take the superstar quarterback as the tiebreaker.
Diante.
I took Bills ultimately because, and I hate to be reductive, but it just turned into like Josh Allen, my level of trust on third downs and obvious passing situations, I think just outweigh where I'm at with Jared Goff. And that's with obviously how efficient he's been as a passer, but they're working ahead of schedule so often that it's just hard to project out that it's going to always look that effective, because there is always an opportunity that, to Steven's point, you get a couple TFLs and now it's 3rd and 9, 3rd and 8, it's 2nd and 12, and that offense falls apart. But I think if you ask me about band of outcomes, right, I think that the band of outcomes for Buffalo's wins are always going to be narrow in a matchup like this. I can see the Lions, on the other hand, getting a 130-yard game from Jahmyr Gibbs and another 85 from David Montgomery. And they scored 3 touchdowns on the ground because there's just nothing Buffalo can do with their light bodies up against that run game. Or you get the Jameson Williams 140-yard 2-touchdown game because he's running in the middle of the field butt naked. So to me, I do think that the variance obviously leans more in Detroit's favor. I'm just picking Josh Allen right now, even watching them last week. Yeah. If not for that block punt, basically giving the Rams some extra breathing room in the first half. I mean, the Bills basically had whatever they wanted on offense. You know, I do think that this defense is struggling. I do think that in coverage is going to be a problem this week. I just think that if Josh Allen is playing in relatively neutral conditions and isn't chasing multiple possessions, I don't know if there's anything that Detroit can do to stop that offense when it wants to move the ball.
And I do think, like, while the matchup is bad on early downs, I think the matchup kind of suits Buffalo on later downs if they are able to get them into passing situations, just because of their experience against the Dolphins offense. I know there are not a lot of similarities between these two offenses, like Miami's and Detroit's, especially on 1st and 2nd down. But on 3rd down, they're trying to do the same thing, you know? They're trying to open up the middle of the field and hit an inbreaker, like an anticipatory inbreaker. Like, Tua throws those passes a little earlier and a little softer. Goff throws them a little harder and a little later, but he does anticipate them. But I really think the second level of this Buffalo defense it might not be great against the run, but it is good at squeezing those zone windows. And Jared Goff has thrown 10 interceptions against zone coverage this year. He threw double-digit interceptions against zone coverage last year. I think that's a matchup to watch.
Yeah, it's. I think these are two of obviously the best teams in the NFL. As Diante was talking, I think one of the most fun things in football right now is when the Bills get down. Like if the Lions go up even like 21-0. You're just like, all right, now let's see what Josh Allen's going to do. Now that's kind of how last week went. It was like, oh my goodness, you're not counting them out. How much time's left? They're going to score again. They're going to score again. So yeah, it'll probably come down to something fluky, like who recovers a fumble or a weird special teams thing, or hopefully not a penalty that we have to lead the Ringer NFL show with on Sunday night. But I think both these teams, really, regardless of what happens, I'm going to feel, unless there's a big injury, I'm going to feel good about their chances to get to the Super Bowl. All right, let's take a break. We come back. We got 2 more games to get to, and then we'll get to our picks. All right, we are back on the Ringer NFL show. Pittsburgh Steelers go to Philadelphia to take on the Philadelphia Eagles. Eagles are 5.5-point favorites. Had a wild week with A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts after their 9th straight win of the season over the Carolina Panthers. Steelers look like they'll be without George Pickens as they try to hang on there in the AFC North and battle for playoff positioning in the AFC. Diante, what's got your attention in this matchup?
To me, it's what version of Russell Wilson shows up against Vic Fangio's defense. Before we get to the Jalen Hurts, AJ Brown piece of all this, and I know that there's plenty to be said. Obviously, been listening to Philly Special, listening to our buddies Bo Wolf and Zach Berman on their All City podcast as well. But to me, when I watched the Steelers offense, and this showed up a bunch in the Browns game last week, we were just looking and it's like, is this pass game any good at all? Yeah. You know, they're missing throws downfield, and you can just see how easily disjointed it is for this offense to become when they don't win those high variance throws on the outside. You know, I haven't looked recently to see what George Pickens' availability may be, but I know that obviously he's nursing a hamstring issue.
Looks doubtful, yeah.
I would imagine so. I know I listened to Mike Tomlin's comments last week before the Browns game, and it sounded like hey, we're really trying to be patient with this thing. It doesn't seem like he's on a quick road to recovery. And now you don't have your best ball winner. And when you don't have your best ball winner to really peel the coverage backwards and open the windows that we saw him take advantage of against Cincinnati, where it was just check down central because the Bengals had to invest so much of its effort into try to keeping away those vertical passes. I don't know what it leaves for this offense, and knowing how Philadelphia has adjusted on a quarter by quarter basis, sometimes series by series basis, to really understanding how a quarterback likes to operate and how an offense likes to operate. The Eagles have maybe been better at that than anybody else in the NFL. I don't know if I can trust the Steelers to just score enough unless they get those high variance passes. And with the way that secondary is playing, I'm not banking on it right now.
Especially without Pickens in there, right? Like, I feel like that was the guy that could have made this a more even matchup on that side of the ball. Like, Fangio's going to play cover one and try to take away the middle of the field on passing downs. He's going to deploy his extra defender in there and try to help out on those crossing routes. Like, that's typically what he's done throughout his time as a defensive coordinator. And if that were the case and Pickens were out there, like, you get a one-on-one matchup. I know the Eagles corners have been good this year, but I trust Pickens to win 1 or 2 of those. And sometimes you only need 1 or 2 moon balls to, stay in a game. But I don't really have any faith in Russell Wilson beating a Vic Fangio defense. He hasn't done it in a couple of years. Going back to 2016, he's only played them twice since 2016, and they're 0-2, and they've gotten outscored. His teams have gotten outscored by 28.5 points in those games, and they're averaging 18.5 points per game. His EPA per dropback is negative 0.28. He's had 3 turnovers. He gets sacked on 9% of his dropbacks. So it hasn't been pretty against a Fangio defense. And on the other side of the ball, like, Pittsburgh is such an identity-based defense. Yeah. I do wonder if they use that same identity against this team, because, like, on paper, the Eagles are not a great matchup for them. They have those guys that can win on the outside if you play cover one. Like, and when Jalen Hurts is hitting those throws and he's throwing it in the vicinity of A.J. Brown usually catches those passes. And the other part of this is the run defense. Pittsburgh's run defense is the best in the NFL against, like, under center formations, against the type of formations we're going to see in Detroit and Buffalo. But against shotgun formations, they're 21st in EPA allowed, and they're averaging 4.7 yards allowed per rush. Against under center formations, it's 2.1 yards per rush, and they're first in EPA allowed. Like, that's a big gap between those two. And we know the Eagles are going to get into the gun and give Saquon Barkley those carries on like zone read style plays. I do wonder if they're going to be able to move the ball in that way, and that's going to make things easier for Philadelphia's passing game.
Yeah, this Eagles offense has not faced a good defense all season long, and they're not going to after this one. This is the only top 10 defense in terms of DVOA that is on the Eagles schedule. It is by far the easiest opposing strength of schedule for any offense in the NFL. To put it into context here, the difference between the Eagles and 31 is the same as the difference between 31 and 19. So this is, it's like, we might not even know, like this is obviously a good sort of measuring stick. All right, they're coming off a bad game against the Panthers and the Steelers are 8th in defensive DVOA and they're relatively healthy here. But this is just a group that hasn't been tested. Diante, as an Eagles fan, do you think they come out and pepper the ball to AJ Brown? Is this like Ruiz said, hey, just gun run? You know, they have a diverse run game, even out of shotgun. You saw them running counter and all kinds of stuff last week. Is this, nope, you're not just going to, throw the ball to AJ Brown and take those one-on-ones. You're going to lean on what's had you win 9 games in a row.
I mean, theoretically, you look back to a couple of years ago and they match up and you just say, hey, hit the copy and paste button on that game plan. Because that was that's one of AJ Brown's one of the best AJ Brown games of his career, right? He absolutely lit the Steelers up because
156 yards, 3 touchdowns.
Like, and a lot of those are not like the best Jalen Hurts balls.
No, he's dunking on those corners,
But exactly. It was just a matter of laying the ball out and just letting him go get it. So I think in terms of identity, in terms of scheme, like Steven was saying, this is as great an opportunity as you can ask for a guy like AJ Brown. You're going to get man one-on-one coverage. Joey Porter has been a lot better in year 2 than he was in year 1, but he still likes to be a grabby physical guy. And AJ Brown usually just has his way when it's time to play bully ball against other bully ball corners. Because you're not bigger, you're not stronger, you're not faster than a guy like AJ Brown. So you would like to see them early in the game be able to take those chances. So I do think that there's a lot of opportunity for Philadelphia to kind of quell a lot of concerns, right? If you hit explosive plays, it means you're more likely to score early in games. That's been an issue for the Eagles all year. I think if you're able to hit those passes and you back them off, now you might be able to attack this team on the ground. I think that in terms of dealing with the Steelers pass rush, you have the best offensive line you could ask for to deal with all the different angles that the Steelers can hit you with blitzes and then obviously straight ahead rushes with TJ Watt. So I would like to believe that this Eagles offense is equipped with all the necessary tools in the tool belt to at least be able to stay effective against one of the league's best defenses. I guess my issue is you turn on the Panthers film, even the Ravens game, you look over like the last month or so, and you're just watching Jalen Hurts not even looking, not even taking those chances deep down the field. Outside of like a couple dig routes off of play action where it's designed in a way where you really don't have many other options to go with the football, you're not seeing him take chances more than 10 to 15 yards down the field. And that has to change in this game. Otherwise, a team like the Steelers is just going to constrict the field and make you play between the hashes. And the only way that they win in between the hashes is if Saquon Barkley breaks off a big run. And I don't know if you can bank on that against this defense.
It does feel like this was like perfect timing for this conversation to be happening around Jalen Hurts. Because like I remember the last time it happened during the season was when like the receivers were out and we were talking about how bad the passing game. Then like AJ Brown comes back,
was bad.
And then he just starts bombing those outside throws. Like he threw with confidence, a confidence we haven't really seen over the last month. And now that we're talking about it again, and we talked about how good of a matchup this is, and there are going to be opportunities outside the numbers, maybe Jalen, after hearing all this criticism all week, is the more ambitious version of himself, and he does take those opportunities. And if he does, I think the Eagles not only win this game, I think they win it by 10 points, but I'm going to take them anyway. Like, even if the offense isn't on track, I just think this is a good matchup for, I think Vic Fangio is going to find a good game plan to stop Russell Wilson.
Yeah, that matchup you mentioned from 2 years ago and that AJ Brown touchdown, I think it was like a clear out route where he's not even supposed to be part of the progression. It was throw it up there for AJ, and guess what? He came down with it. Those throws are not only are those throws missing from the offense now, the designed plays to get him shots downfield where he's open. Jalen Hurts had turnovers in the beginning of the season, heard a lot about it. Did they kind of coach the aggressiveness out of him and say, we're going to run the ball. We're going to play defense. Do not make mistakes. That's how it looks like he's playing right now. And obviously there's always going to be a fine line. You don't want to turn the ball over. You do want to run the ball. But right now he's just leaving way too many plays on the field in the passing game. A couple of fun what ifs from this matchup. 2021 Eagles were interested in possibly acquiring Russell Wilson. They were interested in him when he was drafted and then when he became available. But Russell Wilson obviously had a list of teams he wanted to go to, and he goes to Denver. But man, that offseason for the Eagles, they're looking at Russell Wilson. They're looking at Deshaun Watson. They're looking at Allen Robinson. The quarterbacks didn't want to go there. Allen Robinson signs with the Rams. Eagles keep all their picks. A.J. Brown becomes available and he changes the franchise. So it's almost like the Josh Allen conversation we had. Some of these things are very fragile where sometimes, it's a little thing here and there. And all of a sudden it's, oh my gosh, wow. Howie Roseman has built this amazing roster where it's like, well, yeah, sometimes things fall through and your plan B ends up being the one that works for you. And then another what if I always think about is just drafting Jalen Hurts. I remember doing a podcast during that draft, and we were discussing like where else could Jalen Hurts have gone. The Steelers picked 4 spots ahead of the Eagles in that draft and took Chase Claypool. And I just remember at that time thinking, I can so picture Jalen Hurts in the Steelers uniform being with Mike Tomlin and running this type of offense. And then meanwhile, the Steelers take Kenny Pickett 2 years later, and now they're on Russell Wilson here. So it's just some sliding doors moments here with these two teams.
We got sliding doors this season. I mean, they didn't bring in Zach Bond to be an off-ball linebacker initially. You bring in Bryce Huff to be your star edge rusher. Very little contributions, and then he gets hurt. He's not available. A lot of things have happened, I think, that have just worked out in Philadelphia's favor. There is a piece of it that's like, hey, this is why you take the kind of swings that you take, is you bank on the fact that in the aggregate, these things work out. I also think you get to take those swings as a GM when you know that, the owner trusts you to make decisions and you got a pretty long leash. And if you do make mistakes, they allow you to work your way through it. But I do think, in terms of sliding doors, like the Steelers was actually a team that I thought that Jalen Hurts was going to land at when he was coming out in the draft, because it would have been a safe investment as a second round pick at that time, knowing that you still got, you still had a little bit of time to figure out your quarterback situation and there weren't high expectations for the offense and the rest of that franchise. I'm just very glad you brought up Allen Robinson, and I kind of got goosebumps for a second because I thought that was going to happen and I thought it was going to work. And then for them to pass and land on A.J. Brown, man, we as Eagles fans have been very fortunate in a lot of roster building regards.
I honestly think if you switch the quarterbacks in this game, both offenses would be better off. Like, I think the Steelers would be better off with a run threat at quarterback for this game. And I think the Eagles would be better off with a guy who's just going to say, fuck it, I'm going to throw the deep ball. I'm just going to throw it up to A.J. Brown. So I don't think that would be the case over the long haul of the season. But I think for this matchup, they're kind of like the quarterbacks need to play more like each other to win this game.
Yeah, I thought when Jalen Hurts was having better stretches that Russell Wilson was a good cop, not thrown into the middle of the field, can hurt you with his legs. He's not going to turn the football over, and it's going to hit shots downfield like that. I mean, Russell Wilson made a career out of those things. I don't think any quarterback throws over the middle of the field less than these two guys. So see what it looks like on Sunday in Philadelphia. I've got the Eagles, but I could see a blowout, but I just blindly take the Steelers with the points on the road under Tomlin. So they're 5.5 point underdogs. So I see something like 21-17 Eagles. I know Ruiz, you said you had the Eagles. Diante, how are you feeling with the pick on this one?
I'm taking the Eagles in maybe the second ugliest game that I've seen the Eagles play this year. And it's only the second because that Panthers game just happened last Sunday.
I'm taking the under for sure.
Yes. Yeah, I like the under on the Steelers total points and the under on the game as well. All right, third game we're getting to, Seattle, Sunday night. Seahawks host the Green Bay Packers. Can the Seahawks stay hot? Can they stay in first place in the NFC West? Ruiz, the most interesting thing here is just the scheme matchup. Matt LaFleur, Mike McDonald, two of the best, I think, in the NFL. What has your attention there?
Yeah, that's where I'm looking. And this is always like a fun matchup. They always weird games between these two teams. We had like the Fail Mary. We had the comeback in the NFC title game by Seattle. We had the Matt Hasselbeck, like we want the ball and we're going to win. And then he throws the pick six game. A lot of fun. the Mike Holmgren Bowl, I guess you can call it. But no, yeah, my eyes are on that side of the ball. Mike McDonald has just been on one. We've covered this extensively over the past couple of weeks, and he's going up against the guy that I've been touting as the best coach in the NFL right now, and certainly one of the best schemers in terms of putting together an offensive game plan. We saw that with the Malik Willis games. It's looked less like that with the Jordan Love games, but I just think Jordan Love is that type of quarterback where it's like, he's going to get all the credit for the success of this offense because of the way he plays and how it looks and like the superhuman throws that he makes. But we've seen Mike McDonald have success against this style of offense. It's been the most popular style of offense over the last couple of years. We've seen a lot of coaches get jobs because they know the offense and they know Sean McVay or they know Kyle Shanahan. And obviously Matt LaFleur at one point benefited from his connections with those two guys. And Mike McDonald has done a good job. Like, he had that game against the 49ers offense that looked unstoppable last year. It was very stoppable on that Christmas night against Baltimore. And he's had success against Mike McDaniel. He's had success against Ben Johnson. So I'm really interested to see how this game plays out. He doesn't have the talent he had in Baltimore. And I think the Packers have a lot more talent at quarterback compared to those other offenses I just mentioned. And I do wonder if Jordan Love, his ability to play that kind of superhero role as a quarterback, to make the fadeaway throws, to make the out of structure throws, as long as he can avoid interceptions and mistakes, I think the Packers are going to have a good chance of scoring a lot of points in this game. And the other side of the ball, it's an interesting matchup. Like, it's kind of weakness on weakness and strength on strength. Geno Smith is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL in pure dropback situations. Packers have one of the best defenses in the NFL in pure dropback situations. The Seahawks can't run the football usually. They could last week. The Packers usually have trouble on early downs if they can't get you behind the chains. So I don't know what to expect on either side of the ball. I think one side of the ball is going to be like two masterclass performances by the coaches, and the other side it's kind of going to be like Tyson versus Paul. Boxing match.
Yeah, it's like survival. I mean, it's so boring to talk about the Seahawks offensive line over and over again. They made changes. They're playing better. How much better have they played? And then the Packers pass rush is like one of the most underachieving units in the entire NFL. So it's not like neither side is terrible, nothing like that, but they just have weaknesses where it's like, which one's going to get exposed, which one's going to be able to do more there. Diante, what do you think? What are you looking at in this game?
Honestly, I think the Stevens underselling the Seahawks offense versus Packers defense side of things. And because I think that it mirrors on both ends, they mirror stylistically the things that they like to attack the most, right? Mike McDonald loves offenses that want to hunt for explosive plays because you're going to get all the split safety shells. He's going to blanket you. He's going to force you to dink and dunk and try to play underneath and have to take those long drives and win on third down. For the Packers, I mean, we saw that with them not even having the ball for very long last Thursday against Detroit, they still had an explosive pass rate of like 21%. Because they're always big game hunting. Jordan Love does not look at split safety zone shells and think, oh, well, I guess I can't be a Brave quarterback anymore.
I love that.
He's not. He's
That's
never
my
looking to
favorite
check the
trait
ball
for a
down.
quarterback. If I were scouting, that might be my only question for every quarterback at the combine. Come in here too deep. We're going to throw it anyway.
I don't even want 100%. My quarterback to know the difference between middle of the field closed and middle of the field open. I want him to be like Brett Favre, he's like, I don't know what a nickel defense is. That's the only way I want him to be like Brett Favre. But
I'm with you 100%. So I think that not only is that side interesting, I think on the other end, Green Bay has had to blitz a bunch because that pass rush has been underachieving. That's been a lot of their pass rush production is simulated pressures and blitzes trying to get free rushers. They're just overload of protection and try to force a quarterback to drop his eyes. To me, Geno Smith is one of the best quarterbacks in the league at dealing with the blitz. They're third in the NFL in success rate when they're blitzed in the passing game because he's so good at knowing where the answers are, at setting up protections to pick things up. That does not mean that his offensive line is going to win their matchups all the time. You know, they've been up and down, even though I do think it's been a little bit improved over the last couple of weeks. Maybe seeing Arizona's lack of pass rush helps a bit in that regard. But I do think just stylistically, this is the exact kind of team on the other side that I think both are built to try to play and win against. So I think that we're going to get a pretty nice back and forth affair. I do think that ultimately what it's going to come down to is, can Geno avoid the bad Dak Prescott game where he's trying to attack the blitz aggressively and now you throw 2 interceptions, or you take a strip sack because you're holding the ball, waiting to push the ball downfield to Jackson Smith and Jigba. And then on the other side, I want to see if Seattle's front can continue to produce. I think that the Packers offensive line has played really well. Obviously in the running game, they've been one of the best rushing offenses. And when they keep Jordan Love clean enough to where he can push the ball the way he wants to, that offense can go blow for blow with anybody. And we've seen that demonstrated. So to me, I'm really interested to see what it looks like up front for Seattle's defense, and then whether or not Green Bay's offense can hold up as well.
We need to relitigate like the analysis of the Leonard Williams trade and then subsequent contract extension, because that guy is playing better than or not better, but as good as any interior force in the NFL right now, especially the last couple of weeks. And what he's done to Arizona in particular, he might be the guy that wins then the division. He basically dominated those 2 games against them, which might decide the division. And I just want to make it clear. My criticism of that side of the ball has nothing to do with Geno Smith. I don't want to get excommunicated from
I don't
Geno
think you need to make that clear, Ruiz. I think
just
anybody...
to be sure.
Yeah,
Geno Nation is
I think
sensitive.
that's established at this point.
I don't want to be excommunicated from Geno Nation. A nation that I helped establish in some ways.
Yeah.
Right.
Shout out to Greg
what are we talking
Rosenthal and
about
Griff.
It was interesting last week. I thought Geno was taking, I think his average depth of target was 5.3 or something like that. There were a lot of check downs, take what the defense gives you. I know that his DNA is to be ambitious and be aggressive, but in that game, it was like they were running the football. The ball was coming out. He was taking the check downs. So we'll see what happens here. I like the Packers. I view the Packers as in that top tier in the NFC with the Eagles and the Lions. And I kind of have the Seahawks on that next level down, where games like this might be a little bit too much for them. I like them against sort of the mediocre and slightly above average teams. Maybe I'm wrong. If they come out and win this game, I'll have to look at them differently. But I think Green Bay goes in there and comes away with the W. What do you got, Ruiz?
Yeah, if Seattle is able to replicate its run game from last week, then I think Seattle could win this game. I don't think they're going to. I think that was a one-off thing. I need to see Ryan Grubb stack those performances in a row. So I'm going to take the Packers, who I agree with you. I think they're one of the top tier teams. That performance on Thursday against the Lions only made me more confident in that.
Yeah. What do you think, Diante?
I'm with you. Watching that Lions game, like Steven said on Thursday, even though the Packers lost, I almost came out of that trusting them more. I kind of reflected that in the power rankings. Okay, even in poor situations in terms of time of possession, Detroit getting all the 4th down decisions working in their favor, they still had an opportunity to go win that football game if they were able to get a stop in the end. And I just think that offense, man, when it's clicking, there's really nothing you can do, because any one of those receivers can break the game open. And I think that as we've seen Christian Watson start to heat up a little bit more, I think that things kind of fall into place when one of those guys looks like a clear wide receiver 1. That's not to say that Christian Watson will always be that way, because we've obviously experienced the games where he has drops problems or he's not able to finish plays or whatever the case may be.
He's a roller coaster, man.
Right.
Is,
Exactly. And honestly, a lot of those receivers are, because we've obviously had those conversations about Dontavian Wicks. Romeo Doubs, I think, had his little doghouse moment earlier in the year because he wasn't getting the targets that he wanted. So, you never know with that receiving core. But I do think that with the way that they've been playing as of late, it's hard to bet against that offense. And I just think that team's in a good groove, even if that defense isn't as explosive as it looked like in the first month or so of the season.
That had to have been one of the most frustrating moments of Matt LaFleur's career, when Dobbs was complaining about targets and he's like, I'm putting together a game plan for Malik Willis, man. Give me a break.
Right.
I disagree. I think he's probably I coached Aaron Rodgers for a few years. This is cool.
Nothing can hurt me. I feel nothing.
Yeah. Man, that Dobbs story is just a very good symbol of how long the season is. That was not in my brain anymore until you brought it up. I don't know what week that was. I remember we discussed it, and on the show, we're like, what's going on here? What is he so upset about? But yes, I would have never been able to even pull that from my memory for the 2024 Packers, which is a good thing. We're going into week 15 here. All right, take a break. We come back, and we get to our picks for week 15. All right, we're back on the Ringer NFL show. You know how we do it. It is picks that are minus 120 or better odds. We each get 3 of them every week. Whoever is in last place gets assigned the slop game of the week. That person has to watch the worst game of the week and lead the recap of it on Sunday night. Ruiz, you did a great job of that on Jaguars Titans for us on the Sunday night show. And then last week, Diante goes 3-0 with his picks. You and I both go 2-1. But I had to go to plus 102 on my Falcons bet. So if you get the bet with the better odds, you get the tiebreaker, which means even though your record is by far the best of any of us for the season, you once again get the slop game of the week.
Joe Burrow let me down. He finally did something for you. He finally made your prediction look good.
There you go.
I will say the
Diante,
lesson for me is to get sick more often, apparently, because while I was laying in the bed, struggling through on Thursday, texting our producer, Dan Comer, our picks, I guess I found something in my exhaustion and dehydration that would have worked. So maybe I need to do that a little bit more often.
Exhaustion, dehydration, and troll Ruiz a little bit, because I think you took overs on Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, and I forget what the other one was.
Must have been two or something.
That might not be a bad strategy. Diante, what do you think for Ruiz? Are we Jets at Jaguars? Is there something else that catches up?
I don't even know if there's anything that's competing with that. That feels like the nastiest game possible. I don't know if the Jets defense wants to play football anymore. I don't know if the Jags offense can play football anymore. That one feels pretty clearly like the slop game of the week.
You just got to give me the Mac Jones game every week.
There you go. Mac Jones, the Mac Jones. If anybody wants to, because I don't know how Mac Jones is playing this season. I'm not paying attention to it. So if anyone wants to know, Ruiz is your man. He can tell you. Ruiz on the season is 27-15.
Ridiculous.
Diante is now above 500, 22-20. And I am at 500. We've clawed our way back, baby. 21-21. What's that?
We're like the NFC North.
Listen, everybody 70-56 as a group. That's 56%. Professional gamblers, that's ringer wise guys. Watch out. We said it earlier in the season. Now that I've clawed back, I'm saying watch out. Who knows? Week 18, we might be hosting the pregame show on FanDuel TV. All right, let's get to the picks here. Since I am still in last place, I'm going to take the honor of going first here. And I'm going to go with the old squeaky wheel gets the grease bet and go to the game we talked about and say A.J. Brown over 5.5 receptions. I just feel like we talked about the game plan reasons why this should be an opportunity to get, hit on some plays downfield. I looked at the yardage, but I thought, even if the yardage isn't there, he's getting like 7 slants in the first half in this game. So I took the receptions over the yardage. AJ Brown over 5.5 receptions.
Yeah, I like that pick. I mean, like we laid out in the other segment, I think Jalen Hurts is going to feel the pressure to get him the ball. I think all the talk is going to give Nick Sirianni and Kellen Moore put pressure on them to give him the ball. I think he's going to get like 3 schemed up touches in the first quarter alone. So yeah, I think that will be a comfortable one for you.
There you go.
Listen,
all right,
I think for Philadelphia, they spent all of 2023 acting like their feelings weren't hurt, and it ultimately all blew up in their face. I think that this year they've learned from that lesson and say, let's acknowledge an elephant in the room. Our great wide receiver probably deserves to touch the ball a little bit more often than he has, and you get to see an opening drive that's probably going to target him about 4 to 6 times is what I would bet.
I like that. Last year was like, the Kapadia family, just keep your emotions inside until they boil over. And then it leads to some, that's kind of our family tradition. This year, they're like, get them out in the open. Let's see if we can nip this in the bud a little bit earlier. All right, Diante, what do you have? What's your first pick of the week?
So my first pick of the week is from the Dolphins-Texans games. I'm going under 265 Tua Tagovailoa passing yards. I think that he's played really well as of late. But I do think when you look at the Texans defense and their ability to get home with 4, I do think that this lines up pretty well. I'm not sure of Teron Armstead's status. I know when I was watching the Jets game last week, the Jets-Dolphins game last week, I saw him on the sideline. Looked like he was pretty upset about whatever was going on. I think he's dealing with another lower body injury. And if he's not there, that offensive line really doesn't have much of a prayer of protecting against Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson. I think that Tua's done a good job of trying to continue to operate the offense as pressure is closing in and as pockets are going bad. But I do think that this defense is built pretty well to be able to get home with 4 without blitzing and play those zone shells that are really aggressive and jumping on routes. And this might be, the type of matchup that Tua still struggles against for as well as he's been playing over the last month or so.
My first pick is from this game too. Okay. I think the Mike McDaniel, DeMeco Ryans coaching matchup kind of works out to a draw. I do think it's a good matchup for Houston, like Diante said. But on the other side of the ball, we have Anthony Weaver versus Bobby Slowick. And I've seen this play out already. Anthony Weaver was on Baltimore's staff last year for the 2 games they played against Houston, and Slowick had no answers whatsoever in either game. Couldn't adjust, didn't have any adjustments in the second half of that wild card game, or the divisional round game, I guess it was. I expect to see more of the same because I haven't seen any evolution from Bobby Slowick this season. So I expect him to, try out the same stuff he did last year against Weaver. And Well, it wasn't Weaver. It was obviously Mike McDonald, but Weaver was a prominent member of that staff, and I expect a similar game plan on Sunday. So I'm going to take the Dolphins money line, plus 130 too. I'm not going to lose that tiebreaker again. Nope.
Plus one. Okay. They're 2.5 point underdogs. I like them in that game as well. Like, seriously, Slowick, Texans, freaking show us something. I mean, you had a bye week. You got to regroup. You're going to be in the playoffs. Can you just flip the narrative, not just the narrative, flip the results of what your offense has done this entire season? It has just been so frustrating to watch. Do you have anything? Do you have anything up your sleeve? Any fixes that you can bring to the table here so that we take you more seriously by the time we get to the playoffs?
Listen, I'm not here to tell anybody what to do with their staff, but if I'm D'Amico Ryans, I might sit down with Bobby Slowick and say, hey, if you got aspirations of being the head coach, go the Liam Cohen route. Go work for Bill at North Carolina. Take your offense over there. Maybe you run it up at
Bill's
the college
not taking
level.
that guy.
Give me a fresh slate to work with the offensive coordinator, because to your point, Sheil, I just can't watch this offense do the same thing on a weekly basis and continue to put CJ Stroud in failing situations, put this offensive line in failing situations, expecting receivers to be able to win quickly in ways that just are not tenable with the offensive infrastructure that's built around them right now. It's tough to watch. And I do think, like Steven said, Anthony Weaver, if he's able to roll out that same kind of game plan, and I think that Dolphins defense has been solid all year, maybe kind of one of the more underappreciated groups so far this season. I think that they can really sit on a lot of what Houston wants to do in the passing game, and we might get another just disastrous Houston offensive performance as a result.
Dolphins still have a shot, I think 17% to make the playoffs. So not likely, but that's more than any of the other,
Colts this week.
Fringe teams. So let's see if they can get a win at Houston. All right, my second one, I'm going to the slop game of the week, and I'm going to go Garrett Wilson over 59.5 receiving yards. I don't really have any great reasoning for this other than the Jaguars' passing defense has been trash for most of the season.
That's a great reason. What do you mean?
What's that?
That's a great reason.
Okay, yeah, there you go. It's just like I feel dirty. Why am I even talking about this game? No one wants to, you want to hear me talk about Broncos Colts or something, a game with real implications, but I didn't see any props there that I like. So yes, we don't need to spend another second discussing this other than for you to know that Garrett Wilson over 59.5 receiving yards is my second pick. All right, who's up? Diante, you're up. What's your second one?
All right, you mentioned Broncos Colts. I mentioned them saying that Miami needs a little bit of help from the Colts in order to keep their playoff window open. I don't think that's coming. I'm taking the Broncos minus 3.5 in this game.
Interesting.
I think that for all the growth that has happened with Indianapolis's offense, and I do want to make sure I acknowledge that, like, I still watch the Patriots game and I'm looking at Anthony Richardson miss a lot of throws. And I just think that,
come on,
it's not that bad. I will say it's not bad relative to Anthony Richardson's worst games this year is what I will say. But I think about the Broncos defense. They blitz a lot. That has been an issue for not just Anthony Richardson, but just the Colts offense, because their wide receivers are not very good at winning or being precise as route runners. And the Broncos defense is going to challenge that receiving core to be exactly that. I think that they have a great plan to take away mobile quarterbacks. Obviously didn't work when they played against Baltimore, but Baltimore got more into their under center downhill running game. That's not really a factor for Indianapolis that's been effective for them so far this season. I think the spread stuff, more the QB run stuff, fits what Vance Joseph likes to do in terms of sending pressure from all angles, loading up the line of scrimmage, really forcing you to win one-on-one blocks. I don't know if this is a comfortable situation for the Colts to be playing in. And when they're stuck in these situations, this is what we saw in the first 2 months of the year, where Anthony Richardson is now behind the sticks. He's got to work through progressions behind an offensive line that, while it's grown a bit and not as bad as it was last year and the year before, still struggles in one-on-one pass blocking situations. And Vance Joseph is going to create those with blitzes. I can see a bad Anthony Richardson game that maybe is bad for reasons that go beyond his play. I just don't trust that this Colts offense to be able to get it done in this situation.
Well, I do agree with this. I do agree with the analysis and the take on the matchup. I'm going with the over in this game anyway, because I think it will be, I guess, a bad Anthony Richardson game, but I think there's a chance that it's going to be a volatile Anthony Richardson game.
Right.
Because he's like, we know how the Broncos play defense. They're going to send everybody at you. And like, if you can avoid that and buy time and get out of a sack, like, there's going to be opportunities downfield. And we know Anthony Richardson is going to push it downfield. And Anthony Richardson, for all his problems, the guy just doesn't get sacked. He's like impossible to sack. Yeah. So I think if he gets like 3 or 4 of those plays, Maybe only like a couple of them. I think it will be enough for the Colts to get to 20 points. And then we got a Sean Payton versus Gus Bradley matchup on the other side of the ball. I trust Sean Payton to get 25 points. History between these two. Sean Payton 3-0 against Gus Bradley as a coach and coordinator. 102 points scored in 3 games. That's 33 points a game. Yeah.
Wow. Well, that's good because I took the Broncos -3.5 in my picks without looking up that history. So I like that. Other thing working in your favor, Ruiz, there is that like cornerback 2 is an issue for the Broncos. Riley Moss is still out, so obviously you don't throw to Patrick Surtain, but they're a little banged up back there in the secondary. So maybe Anthony Richardson can hit on some explosive plays. I'm excited about this game.
Anthony Richardson to not throw the ball to Patrick Surtain. I don't think I trust him to avoid Patrick Surtain.
Yeah, it's like the Jordan Love thing, right? Like he doesn't know the shell, the safety shells. He doesn't know that, Patrick Surtain's over there. He's just throwing it. Do you expect him to hit Patrick Surtain is the question. Like the ball has to be in play to catch it.
That's fair. That is fair. We might not get a Patrick Surtain interception because the ball is in the third row. That and
it's going to be thrown very hard as well. So even if it is right at him, man, you don't want to break a finger.
Yeah,
going
get on
into
the jugs
final
machines, Broncos DBs.
All right, it's a bit. Listen, all the games we talked about in the A block, this one has more like playoff implications in terms of just the percentage of each chance to get in than any other game on the docket here in week 15. So I have a feeling we're going to be talking about this game because there are some fun narratives to this one too. Richardson, Bo Nix, which team's getting in, all that. So I'm sure we're going to be talking about this one on the Sunday night show here. All right, I got to take a look here at my chart and say which pick do I want to make my third pick. And you know what? I'm going to go all in on my comeback player of the year, Bryce Young. Yes, that's right. Coming back from what he did early in the season. I know Ruiz isn't going to like this one. He took the under last week. Listen, I watched the Young film against this Fangio defense. Bryce Young played well last week. I will stand by it. 203.5 passing yards. I'm taking the over. Bryce Young against the Dallas Cowboys in Carolina. Let's see. This is partially a team content pick. Partially, I couldn't decide which other one of these picks I really wanted. So there you go. Bryce Young over to 203.5 passing yards.
You should print out your sheet of bets and do like a play calling thing, like cover up your mouth and do that in the future.
Or I should blindfold myself and just pick, because that's basically what I do. Which one of these am I going to go with? So there you go.
You're not going to want footage of this pick going out because it's going to be a bad pick. You're going to lose this pick. Micah Parsons against Bryce Young. I can't. It's going to be bad. But no, I do think the results for Bryce Young have been better. The quality of the throws, man. It's not a first round arm. I'm sorry.
Oh my gosh! All right.
No, those end zone angles.
All right. We're not going to get into I don't want to get into a big Bryce Young discussion this late in the show. I can tell from Diante's face he doesn't want us to get into a Bryce Young discussion either. All right, Diante, what is your third pick?
So my third pick, this one is probably a little off kilter and probably a little bit more vibes based than anything. I'm taking the over 45.5 points for the Bucks and Chargers. I think if I'm going to make an analysis, I would say this is a great opportunity if you're Greg Roman to get some fake passing production against a defense that is just going to give you whatever you want, both outside the numbers and in the middle of the field, especially underneath. I think that the Bucks have been, last in the NFL in defensive passing success rate. I don't think that you're going to have to push the ball as far downfield as they had to against the Chiefs defense in order to be effective. You can kind of dink and dunk and play that Will Dissly check down a fullback tight end hitch route, drag to Quentin Johnston game and be effective if you're the Chargers offense.
It's so depressing, Ruiz. I looked at Ruiz's face as you described that.
Very depressing. And then on the other side, Baker Mayfield and Liam Cohen just have my blind trust now. I've watched it week over week with them being effective, finding great yards after catch opportunities. I do think from a matchup perspective, the Chargers have been one of the better teams, if not the best, in yak allowed per reception. So I do think that there's a little bit of good on good involved in that game. But I just think the way that they found explosives in the running game, Tampa Bay, I'm saying, and how effective and efficient they've been in the passing game, I just trust that they're going to be able to score no matter what defense is up against them. And I just think that on the other side, we'll get enough scoring from the Chargers to at least keep it interesting, even though I think the Bucks should win this game.
These picks are just meant to torment me. You got Bryce Young overs, you got Baker Mayfield love. he's finding yak opportunities. No, he's not. He's just dumping it off to the flat. Get out of here. No, I don't know what to think about this game.
Real quick, Justin Herbert back at practice on Thursday, so he's dealing with a couple injuries, but that's a good sign, but something to keep an eye on the rest of the week.
Harbaugh has activated the toughness gene in that guy. He is going to play football.
Yeah, I think you're probably right.
Did you see the Harbaugh clip? I think it was like a press conference. He was talking about Herbert, and you could tell like he was just talking about himself. He was like, yeah, he's one of those guys where the medicine is football. Like that's how you get better. You get out there and you play. The medicine is
exactly.
Football. It's so funny. I don't know what to expect on that side of the ball. And like the Chargers defense, Bucks offense, like I was joking about Baker Mayfield, but I do like Liam Cohen's offense, and I think this offense really does suit him. And obviously the Chargers defense has been good all year. But I do think this is a good matchup for Greg Roman. Like Todd Bowles' defense is so weird to me. It's like either really good or really bad, depending on the type of offense it goes up against. And I think like a play action type of offense that's gonna take advantage of those heavy bodies. You know, Todd Bowles likes to play a lot of base defense, a lot of base coverages. I think Justin Herbert will find success against that. So yeah, it might be a good week for my old friend Greg.
There you go. All right, Ruiz, what's your last one here?
I'm cheating, by the way. I'm just going to tell you guys right now. I'm going to lean into the bit. I got accused of cheating a couple weeks ago by Sheil on the Keenan Allen thing. So I'm like AJ Brown. AJ Brown put up the Joker avatar on Instagram and was like, I'll be the villain, I guess, if I have to be. Well, by the way, did he put up Heath Ledger Joker or Joaquin Phoenix?
I think it was Heath Ledger.
Oh my God, the movie came out 25 years ago, man. You got to get a new villain to channel when they start talking about you. But I'm going to go Lamar Jackson rushing over. It's not on the board yet. It's not on FanDuel. I'm doing it blind. I don't care what the number is. I'm taking the over. His mom yelled at him for not running enough 2 weeks ago against Philadelphia. Yeah. Lamar came out in the press conference and said, I'm getting back to my game. I'm running. I don't care what anybody says. I'm running the football. So I think he's going to run all over the Giants.
All right. So this is interesting. So our guy, Dan Comer, needs to check FanDuel between now, or you need to send us the number whenever it comes out of Lamar Jackson's rushing total over, and whatever it is, you're taking it blindly.
I've got a question. Do we get to, if the line moves, do we get to choose where the line is set?
Phenomenal question, Diante.
Whatever it closes at.
Well, so we have to check. Who's checking it at 12:59 on Sunday afternoon? You?
Right.
I'm not doing that. Don't give me any homework.
I don't know if I could even trust. Can we trust Dan Comer? He's been trying to short me some picks the last couple of weeks.
All right. So I guess, I don't know. I guess it just has to be whenever someone feels like looking, Diante. That's what the numbers. I don't think it'll change that much. Though.
No, forget about Vegas. You two come together and make up a number right now.
Are you sure you want to do that?
You don't.
It just
want
has to be realistic. Come on now. Just make it realistic for me.
Here, I'm gonna go to his. All right, so you think he's gonna have a great rushing game? I'm gonna go to his Pro Football Reference page real quick here. Let's see what he's averaging per game this season, and obviously it's got to be way more than whatever he's averaging because you think he's gonna have. This is unprecedented territory where we're just making up an over under here. I'm looking past.
Okay, I'm gonna use this as a baseline. Josh Allen's rushing over and under is 40.5 yards.
That's music to my ears.
All right, Lamar is averaging this season, Diante, before you go, 52.2.
I was gonna say 49.5.
No. What do you mean 40? It's going to be way higher than that. 52.2 is his average rushing yards per game, and Ruiz thinks he's going to have a monster rushing game. Up, Diante.
He's going up against Shane
64.5. All right, if we want to make it a little bit more ambitious, you want to say 64.5?
59.5.
No, 50 was barely. It was one little scramble more than his average.
That's 20% over his average, almost.
All right, Sheil, you're the final arbiter here. I say 64.5.
I'll take the middle between those two. So what did you say? 59.5 and 64.5. Difference of 5, 2.5, 62. But we should do a half.
What am I, a mathematician? Like you're doing decimal points?
That's fair.
62.5, Ruiz. What do you say? Are you in?
That's fine. Yeah, I'm in.
All right.
All right, Comer.
All right, and you're not getting plus odds on this, Ruiz. So don't even try. You already got plus odds on the other one. All right, 62.5 rushing yards. I'm excited. I want to see if we did a good job of coming up with the number. Now, when FanDuel comes out with a number, who knows? I mean, our roles is not only taking over wise guys, maybe we're setting lines for the playoffs if we do a good job here. Who knows? All right, those are the picks for the week. Let's run through them again here real quick. I've got AJ Brown over 5.5 receptions, Garrett Wilson over 59.5 receiving yards, and Bryce Young over 203.5 passing yards. This is not good for me to have 3 overs. That's a bad sign, but those are my picks. All right, Diante, what do you got?
I'm taking the Broncos as a 3.5 point favorites. I've got the Bucks and Chargers game going over 45.5 points, and I'm taking the under on Tua Tagovailoa's passing yards at 265.5.
Ruiz.
And I have the Dolphins money line. That's plus 130, by the way. Lamar Jackson over, what was it? 62.5?
62.5. I hope he has 62 rushing yards.
Oh my God, that'd be so annoying. Broncos and Colts over 44.5 points.
There you go. Those are the picks for week 15. Thank you to Diante Lee and Stephen Ruiz. Thank you to producer Christopher Sutton. And of course, Dan Comer helping us out. He'll have an eye on that Lamar Jackson over under. Additional production supervision by Conor Nevins and Arjuna Ramgopal. We'll be back Sunday night after Packers-Seahawks, after Lions-Bills, after Steelers-Eagles, after Broncos-Colts. A fun slate in week 15. We will recap it all. Until then, everyone have a great weekend. We'll talk to you next time on the Ringer NFL Show.